You might have seen a video going viral that claims an economic siege is happening right now at the California border. It talks about a massive trucker boycott that's threatening to break the supply chain. So, what we're going to do here is break down the claims from that video, slide by slide, to really understand the argument they're making. So, it all starts with this one absolutely huge number: an estimated 12,000 independent truckers who are reportedly refusing to drive into California. And get this, the source video is very clear. This isn't just a protest. They're calling it a coordinated boycott with major economic teeth, and it all kicked off at the very start of this year. So you might be wondering what kicked all of this off. Well, according to the source, it all points back to one thing: the full enforcement of a brand new state environmental law that went into effect on January 1st. Let's dig into what that regulation actually is. Okay, so this is it. This is the rule at the very center of this whole mess: the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation. Now, its goal is pretty straightforward. It's about the environment, right? Getting older, higher polluting trucks off the road. But the video argues that its economic consequences have been immediate and really, really severe. All right, so the state passes this regulation. What happens next? Well, how did the truckers react? The source frames their boycott as the first major ripple effect from this new law, and it's all driven by what it calls an economic argument that's just impossible to overcome. And this is really the key point from the source. This boycott isn't framed as some big political statement. No, it's presented as a matter of pure financial survival. The cost to comply, they say, is just too high. Now, check out these numbers from the source. An older, now banned truck might be worth, say, 60 grand, but a compliant, used model, you're starting at $150,000. And a new electric truck, we're talking $250,000, maybe even $350,000. For an independent driver, that is a gigantic financial leap. And to really bring this home, to put a human face on these numbers, the source shares this quote from a driver named Marcus Chen. You can really feel the frustration here. He talks about feeling betrayed, claiming that the financial help he was promised just never came through. And that's what pushed him to join the boycott. So you have the boycott, right? Well, according to the source, that's just the first ripple. The second one is much, much bigger: a full-blown crisis at California's ports. With way fewer trucks on the road, the entire system that moves goods from ships to store shelves supposedly starts to grind to a halt. And to really get why this is such a big deal, you just have to look at how stuff gets out of the Port of Los Angeles. The source points out that a staggering 70% of all cargo leaving the nation's busiest port leaves on the back of a truck. So when those trucks stop moving, the cargo stops moving. It's that simple. And what does that lead to? Well, the video claims the number of shipping containers just stuck at the Port of LA has ballooned. We're talking from a normal level of around 22,000 to a massive 84,000. The source doesn't just call this congestion, it calls it paralysis. And for the truckers who are still on the road, it's simple supply and demand, right? The source claims those short-haul shipping rates, that's the cost to get a container from the port to a nearby warehouse, have shot up by 188%. And that cost? Oh, it definitely doesn't just stay at the port. And that price hike is what creates the third ripple, the one that supposedly washes over the docks and straight into businesses, and ultimately hits all of us. This is where the source claims everyone starts to feel the pain in their wallet. The way this chain reaction is described is super simple. The port charges more to ship something. The warehouse that gets the goods passes that extra cost onto the retailer. And guess who the retailer passes it to? Yep, you right there at the checkout. And if you want to see what this looks like in the real world, the source claims that grocery distribution centers are now operating at just 62% capacity. Think about that. That means almost 40% of the food that's supposed to be moving through the system just isn't showing up. The video also points out the human cost for other workers too. It shares this story of a warehouse supervisor whose hours were apparently slashed just because there were no shipments to unload, putting her ability to pay her bills in jeopardy. So what's the big picture number here? What's the total economic damage we're talking about? Citing a USC study, the source throws out a huge figure: a potential loss to the state's economy of over $8 billion. Okay, so up to this point, it sounds like a California problem, right? Well, the final argument from the source is that this isn't just a local issue at all. This is potentially a national crisis in the making, with serious implications for the entire country. And their case for this being a national problem really boils down to a few critical points. First, 40% of all U.S. container imports flow through this one port. So the backlog is said to be hitting everything from car parts to electronics. The source even claims that critical medical supplies are stuck in this logjam, forcing some hospitals to actually ration supplies. Okay, but here's where the politics of this get really, really interesting. The video points out a totally unexpected twist. The powerful Teamsters union has apparently sided with the non-union independent truckers against the state government. It's this incredibly strange bedfellows situation. And that brings us to the final big question the source material leaves you with. It paints this picture of a head-on collision between environmental policy and economic reality. And the question it really puts on the table is, when that happens, who ends up paying the price?